My argument is that the Lavender Scare was a social turning point in the U.S. During 1945 to 1970 that affected the U.S. to a certain extent. Lavender Scare was an event during the pinnacle of the Cold War which affected many people of the LGBTQ community. The Lavender Scare was a part of a broader period called the Red Scare in which the U.S. government and other organizations targeted elite communists as a threat to national security. The Lavender Scare was an anti-gay persecution in the U.S. in which the government started firing people with different sexual orientation and doing intense background checks on job applications of the government. The biggest rationale behind the decision was that homosexuality was not socially accepted and many kept it a secret. If they were caught being homosexuals, the U.S. government thought that the USSR spies would use it against them and try to extract government and military secrets. This caused a lot of hatred toward homosexuals, and a significant amount of U.S. citizens thought homosexuals were communists, adding more weight to the negative stigma of homosexuals. The Lavender Scare intensified the most during Senator Joseph McCarthy's infamous crusade against alleged communists and homosexual and sexual perverts, which refers to homosexual people. Using the already driven fear by the Red Scare, McCarthy portrayed homosexual people as a threat to national security. Homosexual must not be handling top-secret material. The pervert is easy prey to blackmailers, stated McCarthy in his press conference regarding his purge against homosexuals working in the government, according to CBS News. We can see the extensive aggression towards homosexuals through Executive Order 10,450, which was a government policy that gave security clearance and employment regarding homosexual people. This was a primary source of explicit inequality to homosexual people in America. In a reported provision case from the Department of Commerce, we can see the enforcement of Executive Order 10,450 and the government's aggressive purge of homosexual people. People of the LGBTQ community had to live a difficult life during this period. Many were fired from their job and left unemployed. David K. Johnson, professor of gender history at the University of South Florida, provided insight of homosexual people during the Lavender Scare in his book, Lavender Scare. He interviewed Bob Cantillon, a Navy serviceman who was interrogated by the police about his homosexual activities. He was asked to name 5 other homosexual men, and the next day they were discharged. Cantillon recalls the security officials boasted that gay people very easily confessed and told the truth. What they don't talk about is the fact that they essentially blackmailed people. They threatened to tell their families, so a lot of gay people quietly resigned. However, many members of the LGBTQ community filed a lawsuit for the government segregation towards homosexual people. One of the most famous court cases about the Lavender Scare is the Supreme Court case Bollier vs. Immigration and Naturalization Service. However, the Supreme Court upheld the U.S. government's right to discriminate homosexual people, upholding national security to be a more pressing issue than the discrimination of homosexual people. From this, we can see the clear effects of the Lavender Scare on homosexual people in America during the Cold War. However, a historian might argue that the level of homophobia was not significantly impacted as people of the LGBTQ community were still considered second-class citizens in America. Homosexuality was still viewed as a mental illness in America. Many states still criminalized homosexuality, which led to arrest and marginalization of LGBTQ until the late 20th century. Erin Owen, professor of international studies at Georgia Southern University, argues differently. She states, the Lavender Scare is an example of ever-changing nature of the perception of queer identity in society, as well as a changing presence of feminism and gender dynamics within the political sphere. Ultimately, the Lavender Scare was an event that added more negative stigma to the existing homophobia in America, thus greatly affecting, thus being a social turning point in the U.S. during 1945 to 1970.